On this week's Eastern Conference edition of Locked On NHL, the Toronto Maple Leafs hand the captaincy from John Tavares to Auston Matthews. What does it mean? We've got the host of Locked On Maple Leafs with us, and out of the entire Eastern Conference, which captain's facing the most pressure? All that and more on this week's Locked On NHL.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NHL, your team every day. Thank you very much for making us your first listen each and every day. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we have local experts on the biggest stories. You can find us everywhere you get podcasts. We are free and available on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. Now terms do apply. I'm Ross Levitan. You can find me 5 days a week over at Locked On Ottawa Senators. With me as always, the Battle of Ontario from Locked On Maple Leafs. It is Mike DiStefano. Today's Wednesday, August 14th. And Mikey, huge news initially reported from Darren Dreger of TSN, and the handover completed this morning. Your Toronto Maple Leafs making a change of captain, the 26th captain in franchise history. Were there rumors or rumblings? Because this news kind of caught me by surprise.
Caught me by total surprise too. And it's not that Auston Matthews, like everyone knew eventually this was going to happen, but to happen when it did totally surprise myself. I mean, John Tavares only has one more year left on his contract. I think the easy thing for everybody would have been just play out the year, and then next year there's an easy transfer power over into Auston Matthews. And that was the expectation. Then all of a sudden on Monday, a press release gets sent out. Maple Leafs will be holding a press conference at 11 a.m. And then the insiders do their thing, do their work. And, you know, they within 10 minutes uncover that the whole point of it is to announce Auston Matthews as the newest captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And yeah, I was floored, like absolutely stunned to see that they were doing it a year earlier than they had to. I gotta say though, after watching the press conference today, I think it's not going to be as awkward as maybe you would think it would be. It seems like John Tavares is completely on board. And he's just such a quality person. Honestly, he is. And he understands that this is not only John's team going forward, but Austin's team going forward, but it's been Austin's team for the last couple of years. And I think it really shows the high character he is for him to kind of swallow that, acknowledge that, be humbled by the experience, and put on a face and go out there. And quite honestly, I do believe to my core, he's happy for Austin and believes that it was the right decision, but certainly came a lot sooner than most people expected.
Now, as much as he can say the right things, and we know John Tavares is nothing but class, that's been the case for the more than decade that he's in the National Hockey League. He's going to hit 500 goals. Like, this is a Hall of Fame quality talent and person, as you mentioned. But at the same time, like, this has got to be difficult for him personally. He was the captain for 5 years on Long Island. He was the captain in junior, first overall pick, exceptional status. Like, he was as highly touted of a prospect, almost, if not as much, as Auston Matthews. Like, it's not like a guy who's just been, a veteran fading into the background. His first couple of years in Toronto, even the points, he had a 44-goal season. And what almost surprised me, what's that?
47, I think, but
don't let me count some of them out. Seriously.
When was the last 47-goal scorer of the Senators, pal?
That'd be Danny Heatley.
There you go.
Back to back. 05, 06, 06, 07. Yeah. But with John Tavares, I mean, what caught me by surprise when I went back and looked at it is I just figured it was almost, and we see it before, where a free agent signs a huge ticket and is named captain. But there was a year in between where the Leafs thought about this. Where were you back then? Do you remember? Were you on board with giving it to Tavares? Because I know some were like, hey, there's a new trend that captains are getting younger and younger. Just slapped the C on Auston 5 years ago.
It's interesting. I remember having that conversation. I think that was right about when Locked On Leafs launched. Maybe it was the year after Locked On Leafs launched, but I definitely was having those conversations with people. And I was actually Team Morgan Rielly at the time. That was the player who I felt deserved and should have been given the captaincy back in 2018. But there was equally as many people who thought Auston and just as many people who thought Tavares. It really was a 3-horse race. And ultimately it went to John Tavares, and that was back in the Mike Babcock era. And, Tavares is just such a stoic character that I think that really fit more so what a Mike Babcock captain would be. So it didn't shock me, I guess, when it was named that it was Tavares. There was also, not to bring up old wounds here, but there was an incident with Auston like the summer before that announcement was coming, and there's been a conspiracy theory that they pivoted to Tavares based off of that. They didn't want to give Auston the captaincy because of that situation. But it's old news now, and he's learned from it, he's grown from it, and he's now at a point in his career. And even Tavares said this today, where he's matured to a point where he's ready to take on the leadership and lead this team to the promised land. What I appreciated coming out of the mouths from all three Maple Leafs people who spoke today, Brad Treliving, John Tavares, and Auston Matthews, all three up on the stage, that all three of them did, say the goal is to win a Stanley Cup. And they feel that this decision, Auston, with him being the face of the franchise, being the head of the snake, gives them the best chance to do that. So ultimately, it's, 5 years later, Matthews finally gets the captaincy, but I think that Tavares was a great captain and a good choice at the time for the Maple Leafs.
Auston Matthews will turn 27 years old in September. He's already third all-time in franchise history with 368 goals, 52 away from the record set by Matt Sundin at 420. Amazing to think that he could reach that milestone, probably hitting his average goal output for a season.
Yeah, he'll go down as possibly the GOAT, the greatest Leaf of all time. He's pretty darn close to it. Like, if the playoff success comes, like he's there. That's all he's missing, really, is the playoff success. Like, at least Sundin's been to a third round. Dougie took the team to a third round. Wendell had some team success. If the team success comes now with Auston Matthews as captain, I think I think he'll go down as the greatest Leaf of all time. The one other thing that I want to point out about this too, and why once it was made, I guess I came to this realization, the decision was made that Auston was going to get the captaincy. How much of it do you think, and I've talked about this, so I'm curious to get your thoughts as an outsider's perspective. How much influence do you think maybe Craig Berube had in this decision, right? New coach, the GM's been there for a year or two in Treliving, bringing a new coach, new leadership. Like, how much do you think, like, if it was Sheldon Keefe coming back, I don't think that this transfer of captaincy happens. I think Berube, and this is kind of him putting his fingerprints on the team a little bit.
Yeah, it makes it a bit more of a natural timing. And you also see from a managerial thing, it's the one where it's the longest term. So as Treliving came in last summer, you have an evaluation period, and that goes throughout this season. So I think that the timing makes sense from that standpoint. I do, however, look at the other side of just 1 year left of John Tavares. Would it make that much of a difference? And now you're putting a huge level of pressure on the start of the season, because we know the Leafs media, there's always a whole story about every single game. Well, if they all of a sudden get out to a slow start until even Thanksgiving in Canada at the start of October, now all of a sudden Auston Matthews is facing questions day after day. And it felt like, from a media personality standpoint, I think it suited John Tavares just fine to go give the cliche answers and say all the right things that I'm sure he believes. Work hard, get pucks in deep, and practice, and it'll pay off. But I think with Auston, he's got that superstar swagger that you need as a star. But sometimes that can turn into friction with the media, where you feel like, why are these guys questioning me? Like, we're this good. We're right there. You know what I mean? It takes that maybe maturity, which is what comes up, right? Where it's like, you have to be able to understand that they're not telling you you're not good. It's just they're looking for the stories, and they've got to ask the same question 100 different ways throughout the season.
Oh yeah. We know all about that. I don't have that worries with Auston, though. He's been pretty good with the media, and he's been fair. After tough games, he usually would go out there and speak. Along with John, obviously, he would go out there and he would answer the tough questions. He very rarely would get snippy with anybody with the media. There's another guy in Toronto where I think you could say that about. I'm not going to throw him under the bus on this particular podcast.
On Locked On Sens, we might have said that that's who we were hoping became captain.
Never.
It would have been an amazing story.
It would have been, but no. It would have been a story, that's for sure.
Well, you want to get into the pressure? Let's do that on the other side, because we're going to talk about the pressure that Auston Matthews is under as Leafs captain and which other Eastern Conference captains are feeling the same. That's all next. Plus, there's two in the East that don't even have a captain, Tampa Bay and Buffalo. We throw out a few ideas and some fits if they do choose to go in that direction. That's all next. You're listening to Locked On NHL, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Do you need last-minute tickets? Do you want them at the lowest prices? Well, it's guaranteed at Game Time. Game Time makes getting baseball tickets easy, fast, and prices are always exactly what you want, low. With killer last-minute deals, all-in pricings, you can even see views right from your seat, and their lowest price guaranteed. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. I know Mikey and I, we're not afraid for a little loony Tuesday at the ballpark, and well, why not just eat cheap but also get in cheap? And that can happen with Game Time. So I monitor the prices. They always dip right before the game, and that makes it easy to get in. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL. That's LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Welcome back, Locked On NHL, your team every day. We have local experts on the biggest stories 5 days a week. So if you're gearing up for NFL season, yeah, we've got you covered. The NHL season, I was saying the rookie tournament start in less than a month. So we're fired up about that. And now all but two teams in the Eastern Conference have a captain as well. Not that the Leafs didn't before, but we've moved over from John Tavares to Auston Matthews. Tavares did something that the Leafs hadn't done since 2004, won a playoff series, one of them.
Yeah.
In 7 years, or I guess for him, 5 as captain. But what is the expectation for Auston Matthews? Not just that one round that's been broken through, the glass shatters. What kind of pressure's on him going into this season?
Well, there's always pressure in Toronto, right? We know that it's the hockey mecca of the world, and when you're the leader, the face of the team, that's just going to completely just continue to amount that pressure. But when you talk about what the team is going to have to do, what the fan base is expecting of them, I mean, they're expecting a winning hockey club. Ultimately, they're expecting this team to go out and contend for a Stanley Cup. This team certainly needs to get through the first round. I don't think another first round exit is going to satisfy any fans, regardless if this is a bit of a change of scenery year, a step back year. Some people are considering it. I don't see it that way. I think that they still need, they're in a window to contend. They have to do their best to do so. And if they can't get out of the first round again, that'll be another utter failure out of this group. And especially considering you've got a couple free agents on the team that are pending UFAs in John Tavares and Mitch Marner. So if they don't make it out of the first round, who knows what that team's going to look like 2 years from now. So lots of pressure on that team to succeed. And now, the guy who was, leading the team on ice, with the points and the goals, Auston Matthews, but now leading the team off the ice as the captain and the face of the franchise too. Lots of pressure on him.
There certainly is. Now, you mentioned there is always pressure in Canada, and Brady Tkachuk's feeling that in Ottawa this year. Hell, with all those false trade rumors that we exclusively uncovered at Locked On Senators, with Brady joining us just a couple weeks ago.
The streets were talking, weren't they?
No, the streets were very firm that Brady Tkachuk wants to be a Senator for a long time. But what I'm getting to is look, in Montreal, I don't think that Nick Suzuki is under very much pressure right now. And when we look at the East as a whole, it's kind of like a couple more free spots on the bingo card where the Habs, they're very excited about the recent draft picks, but I think that that's bought Nick Suzuki a lot of time. So when I started looking at the hierarchy of captains in the Eastern Conference, two things stood out. One, the fact there's only one defenseman in the Eastern Conference, captain Jacob Trouba, and the fact that you look at certain situations and they're coming to a head. And I'm talking about Detroit with Dylan Larkin, Ottawa with Brady Tkachuk, but then there's another side of it where guys like Sidney Crosby and Alex Ovechkin, they want glory before their days as the potential first guy to touch the cup. The handoff from Gary Bettman, like there's not a whole lot of chances left. So outside of the Toronto Maple Leafs and Auston Matthews, who I would agree would be right at the top of the list for most pressure, who's right behind them for you?
Well, I think one more name you could probably throw into that Nick Suzuki, Brady Tkachuk conversation is probably Nico Hischier of the New Jersey Devils, especially after a massive step back last year. And now it's can the team get it done? Well, they finally got that goaltender. So now there's no more excuses, right? So it's a group that needs to take that next step and they need to, contend. They brought in Sheldon Keefe to hopefully, bring them far into a playoffs and contend for a Stanley Cup. So I think Nico Hischier is another one of those younger guys where there's pressure to take that next step. But it's interesting. I think when you look at players and teams who might have a lot of pressure on them, what about Brad Marchand? Because that's not a team that's getting young. He took over the captaincy, obviously. With Bergeron stepping down after Zdeno Chara. And they've got Brad Marchand. Things went very well for the Bees last year, extremely well. They went all the way to a second round when people thought that it was going to be a step back season for them. And he's not getting any younger, obviously. So can the Bruins keep that, that winning window alive? And he's going to have to be the face of it, obviously. But another year older, if things don't go well for Boston or if he starts to take a step back, there'll be a lot of pressure on him.
I'm going to go with the other big American market, New York City, the Rangers. Jacob Trouba exercised his no move clause this summer. That could get ugly if it's not a great start to the season, right? I think the fans will be on him.
So I was going to say Trouba, but because of that, it's almost like an asterisk where it's there will be a lot of pressure on him, especially if things don't go well. They were supposed to move off of him, and then what was the rumor that they were trying to bring
Detroit?
somebody in? Yeah, they're going to try and move Trouba to Detroit so that they can make another move, and they just weren't able to do that, and they weren't able to make that second move afterward.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's going to be tons of pressure on Trouba, but we like the Rangers on this.
I know we do, but
we're big on the Rangers.
And the thing with the Rangers is the fans are like Chris Kreider, right? He's right there. He's the heart and soul guy too. Not that Trouba isn't, but he's obviously crossed the line a number of times where it almost has hurt the team in certain situations. And his contract, he's not even in the final year, man. He's got another year after that. So he's on my top three for sure. I could be argued into 2 versus 3, but I think Trouba's facing a lot of pressure going into this season.
Like Blake Wheeler level pressure?
Ooh, well. But that was an awkward situation too, where the new coach came in and just stripped him, but didn't give it to someone else. Yeah, their evaluation year, they're just like, no, we're good.
Yeah, that was tough. That was definitely tough. Who they ended up giving it to?
Adam Lowry. Yeah.
Adam Lowry got it. Yeah.
Yeah. But with Blake Wheeler was right there in New York. So he saw firsthand kind of what his former Jets teammate Jacob Trouba thought about being under that kind of microscope. But outside of those two guys, I like you bringing up Nico Hischier. I think my other one will be a two-headed monster, and I'm just going Ovechkin Crosby because those two they're good enough captains to pull their team. And Washington had a makeover. I know Dan Holme, our Locked On Capitals host, is super fired up about the changes in Washington, and it's either going to be spectacular or it's going to crash and burn because those are two polarizing players in Pierre-Luc Dubois and Jacob Chychrun, and a whole lot of their season is on them and Logan Thompson, who's never played more than 40 games as a starter.
Yeah, well, Logan Thompson and he got 1A, 1B, Charlie Lindgren,
Oh, right,
who played
Lindgren.
well for them, yeah.
A Caps writer gave him a 5th vote for the Hart last year.
And there you go. I
I
mean,
always like.
technically,
No, I
I
know. Yeah, he was.
you can make the argument, like, that team doesn't make it to the playoffs if Lindgren doesn't go
Fact,
on that run. Like,
fact. Just
so
funny to see. I always like the ones because there's always a few players in the votes that have just one vote, and I look where it is. The funniest is where it's like one guy out of 150 or however many vote, one person thought he was the second best defensive forward in the league, and nobody else had them on their ballot. So I
yeah.
always like going through that. It's always a fun exercise. But look, the two guys I think who we can say the least amount of pressure is on is Nick Suzuki. I think that this is a free bingo card year for him. And Alex Barkov, the guy just won the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, yeah, wow. Yeah, I think he's doing pretty well. The one that's interesting, though, too, is, like, Sean Couturier. I don't know what
Mhm.
like, just because last year, things did not look all too well between Couturier and John Tortorella. He's the captain of your team.
But he was
They
named captain mid-season, right? Like, it was kinda
It was
strange.
bizarre, and, like, right after they named him captain, then they started to, like
Healthy scratch?
yeah, and it's like, why'd you name me captain if you're gonna do like, it didn't make a whole lot of sense,
No.
especially when later that summer, they signed Konechny to a long-term 8-year deal. It's like, that guy could be captain material. Why didn't
Yeah.
you just wait? Like, that's a weird situation to me, so that one's kind of, an uneasy captaincy situation.
Two teams without a captain, Tampa, Buffalo. Easy choices for me, but will they name one? We'll discuss some options next. You're listening to Locked On NHL, your team every day.
This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
Welcome back, Locked On NHL, your team every day. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. It's an awesome time to be a sports fan because it's all about anticipation. It's what's going to happen at the start of the season in almost every sport. Of course, baseball's in full swing. I was just using the Game Time app, got down to a Minnesota Twins game earlier this summer. Highly recommend, and it was such an easy thing to do because of our friends at Game Time. Locked On NHL gets you $20 off. I could be put in charge for less than $20 to name the captains for both Tampa and Buffalo. I think these are extremely easy decisions, Mikey. And I think at least for Tampa, there has to be a captain named before opening night because it's
Yeah.
that obvious.
I think they're both very obvious too, right? Like, we're talking Victor Hedman in Tampa
And
and
yeah,
Rasmus
Rasmus
Dahlin
Dahlin.
in
Yeah.
Buffalo. So all of a sudden you triple the amount of defensive captains in the Eastern Conference by announcing these two vacancies. I would imagine that we hear some sort of announcement about this. I understand maybe they wanted to kind of cool the waters after letting Stamkos walk, but it's just way too easy and obvious just to hand over the seat to Victor Hedman in Tampa. Just way too obvious.
Well, and then they extended him. He's going to the final year of a deal, paying him 7.8, 7.5, and then he gets a little bit of a raise and a 3-year extension. So he's signed until 2028. It's just a complete no-brainer. He's been everything but wearing the C. And you look at that Stanley Cup run where Stamkos played 0 but 2 periods. He scored the goal. It was a great moment, but like
two shifts.
that was in the bubble. Like
Yeah.
that was Victor Hedman's team
Yeah.
in, you could argue, maybe the worst circumstances to have a playoff run, and he was able to keep his team focused. And they had a
won the
couple like marathon. Their first game of that playoff was 5 overtimes against Columbus.
Yes, if you're not including the play-in rounds, yes.
No, you want to include it?
Wow.
You want to include it?
Anyways, you're correct. There was a 5-period marathon game where he played an insane. He played something like 60 something minutes, 70 something minutes. Like, it was insane how much time on ice that guy had. He ended up winning, if I'm not mistaken. He did win the Conn Smythe that year too.
Yeah,
Um,
he's awesome.
Captain material through and through. Victor
And
Hedman.
is there even any other options really in Buffalo? Because obviously they went with the veteran, respected angle of having Kyle Oposo as their captain. He gets traded to Florida, wins a cup. Great story there. But it seems, and I mean, first overall pick, he's kind of been groomed throughout his career to be this guy. And he stepped into an amazing kind of number one defenseman status, I think, over the course of the last 2 years. Only thing missing for him is getting into the playoffs.
Yep, absolutely. The only other name that
He had 20 goals this year, Dahlin
was unbelievable, man. Like,
20 goals?
For a while, he was up there with Quinn Hughes. Like, when you're talking about, front runners for defenseman of the year why am I blanking? What's the award called again?
For the Norris?
The Norris, thank you. I kept wanting to say
I almost call it the Carlson.
The Carlson. Look at this guy.
He's got 3 of them. Hey, you know what I respect about Dahlin? He's only missed 6 games in the last 3 years.
Durable, and dependable, right?
Yeah.
Best abilities, availability,
and plays the right way too.
As your number one defenseman, two-way guy, plays the right way, anchors a power play. Dahlin's a hands down guy for me in Buffalo as well. But the only guy who I think who could make a case for it, possibly Alex Tuch.
Yeah,
like he's from Syracuse, which is not too far away from Buffalo. It's within an hour's distance drive from Buffalo or Rochester.
He felt he was going home.
Rochester
when he was acquired in that Eichel trade. He felt like he was going home.
100%. And he's been a great player. He plays. You talk about playing the right way. I mean, Alex Tuch plays the right way too. So that would be the only other player that I would possibly consider. But yeah, I'm like 98% of the way ready to give it to Rasmus Dahlin.
So Dahlin there, Hedman there. Obviously, you got to give your hat tip to Braden Point and Nikita Kucherov, but it's Victor Hedman's team, and that's 100%. Just the way it is. That's just the way it is.
Point's a lot closer to it than Kuch. I think Kuch is a little down.
I don't think Kucherov wants it.
No, I don't think he wants it. He wouldn't do the media.
Imagine Kucherov the captain in Toronto.
Hockey. He's like why Phil Kessel was never the captain in Toronto. He just wants to go play hockey. Like, he doesn't want to have to deal with all
nothing wrong with that, man. He's given us a few highlight reel moves, and
Ross, he's pretty good at it. He's pretty good.
Yeah, not bad, man. Tampa's going to be a fascinating team to watch this upcoming season.
Yeah, step back, step forward, same. What do you think?
The defense is kind of what I'm hinging on. Like, will McDonough stabilize at his age? He was good in Nashville the last couple of years. I will say, he played, if not up to, close to the contract that they needed to move back and forth, but he's still a good player. But Chernak took a huge step back. I felt like last year he needs to be back on track for making over $6 million.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm looking at their decor because they're going to score goals. Like, Point's going to get another 50. Kucherov could be easily at 100 points again.
Well, keep in mind they brought in Gensel too to replace the offense.
But that's the Stamkos replacement.
That's what I mean, right? So offensively they're fine.
Vasilevsky start and it made sense. He came off his surgery in the offseason, but for me, if we get second half Vasilevsky, then why wouldn't they be top 3 again in the division?
I think they're fine. I've read a couple of people suggesting that their team is going to take a step back. They're an aging group, an aging core, and Vasilevsky's done. You wouldn't believe the amount of lists that I've seen that do not have Vasilevsky as the top goalie in the league. He's still
NHL Network had him at 3.
Absurd.
Yeah.
Who would have Igor and Hellebuck ahead of him?
Yeah, Igor is 1.
Yeah, I mean,
I was almost surprised they had Bobrovsky at 7, and it's for goalies right now, and they didn't say look, including potential, all that. They're a goalie to start a game right now. Bobrovsky at 7.
Yeah, I mean, did you not watch what he did the last 2 playoffs?
Swayman at 4 was a little rich for me. He had a great playoff, but
very
best goalie in the league.
Dude, I was having.
You know what I think that is though? Hey, I'm all for it. You know what? They should have made Swayman 1. As a fan of a different team in the division, that's another storyline. Jeremy Swayman doesn't have a contract right now.
True.
Could you imagine they go into next season, Swayman holds out, and you got Korpisalo as the starter?
He's got that team right here. He's got him by the nuts. He's got him by the nuts.
I'm just telling you, like they need Jeremy Swayman in goal for opening night. They're starting the season in Florida. Banners going up for the Panthers.
I think he'll be there. I mean, hey, coming off this past weekend, right? All the GMs were up north. Maybe they're chilling out at Boots and Hearts. They're starting to get stuff done, right? Monday, you had this captaincy announcement, and then Tuesday you had the offer sheets that went out. You had a trade. You had Kyle Dubas bringing in Cody Glass. So Cody Glass is in the Eastern Conference now with the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think that was a decently sneaky trade, by the way. I know it's a low key one, but they gave up nothing to make it happen.
Yeah,
so
no, I don't mind that.
So things are starting to happen. Okay. We'll have arbitration hearings throughout the next couple of weeks. I think
but he didn't file, by the way.
He didn't file, right?
No, he didn't file. He went to arbitration last year too, and that's what this is fascinating. The Bruins right now have $8.6 million in cap space.
It's enough to sign him.
It should be, but look at the goalies who he's ranked right around in the NHL Network's list. They're all making about $8 million.
Well, that's probably why they got it ready to go.
Okay. Well, why not pull trigger then? What are we waiting for? They traded Ullmark. Like, was that not like? Shouldn't you have probably signed Swayman or had that contract in the top drawer before you make that move?
Yeah, it was a weird situation. I certainly would have preferred to have that trade completed, done with, have your goaltending situated before moving on from your Vezina winning goalie from 2 years ago. Probably would have tried that, but I mean, whatever. I think it'll work out. I'm not worried about it. If we get to September and there's still nothing in place, then I think Bruins fans will have more of a case to worry. But as of now, there's still time.
There are still some other big RFAs right now.
Detroit's got a couple.
Detroit's the biggest is Lucas Raymond and Moritz Seider, but they've got a ton of cap space. However, we know Steve Yzerman's not going to just hand over the blank check, so we'll see what happens there. And Seth Jarvis, sneaky big one with the Carolina Hurricanes. He's a really good player, so curious him. Cole Perfetti with Winnipeg out west, and there's a few others around the league. I think Quentin Byfield's the most recent to agree to a contract. He got his bag, but I don't know if that might be extended past next season because I know he didn't turn. Anyways, Byfield locked up. He's going to be a stud too. Lots of great young talent in the NHL. Just makes it fun to watch, and we appreciate you listening and hopefully learning a little bit each and every Wednesday about the Eastern Conference. Now we'll pass it over to Power Rankings Thursday. Again, the big story of the day, Auston Matthews named the 26th captain in Toronto Maple Leafs franchise history. For more on that story, go check out Mike DiStefano over at Locked On Maple Leafs with Dave Morassutti. And for more from me, go check out Locked On Sens. That's it for us. This has been the Locked On NHL podcast, your team every day.